Would you believe it if a simple man, a barefoot peasant without titles and without power, said he had seen the Mother of God? Not a fleeting vision, not a night dream that disappears with the dawn, but a real tangible encounter where heaven bent down to touch the earth and whispered the words that would cross 5 centuries to this precise instant in which you listen. Nearly 500 years ago, in a Mexico wounded by the conquest, surrounded by pain and division, the impossible happened. Not in the temples, not in the bishops' palaces, not in the places where the powerful gather to deliberate about the sacred and the profane. It happened on a forgotten hill, to a forgotten man, revealing a truth that the whole world was trying to deny. Heaven chooses the humble. This is not just a story about a miracle. It is a story about consolation. About the moment when human suffering finds the divine answer not through explanations, but through presence. About the word that heals the soul before any medicine touches the body. About an eternal instant in which the Mother of God whispered to the broken heart of a man, "Am I not here? Who am your mother?" Do you feel lost amidst the chaos? Have you been sincere in your search for answers, for meaning, for some proof that the divine still exists? Perhaps you have screamed in silence, waiting for someone somewhere to hear, waiting for heaven to answer. Well, this is the story of how heaven answered, not with thunder or with signs written in the heavens, but with maternal love, with tenderness, with the certainty that you were never forgotten. The story of Our Lady of Guadalupe begins where all true stories begin, with the silence of a heart that still listens. 1. Human pain, the weight of choices. Juan Diego was nobody. Exactly like you, like me, like every human being who has ever breathed under this uncertain sky. He was a 55-year-old man when the story that would immortalize him was still asleep in time. His feet knew only dust. His hands knew only work. His voice was the one the world does not hear, the voice of the simple man, the man without property, the man whose death would go unnoticed were it not for what he would carry before dying. His uncle Juan Bernardino was dying. Not slowly as many die while hope persists, but quickly, as life sometimes fades when illness leaves no room for illusions. Fever consumed the body. Breathing became shorter and faster, as if the lung were apologizing for no longer being able to do its job. The eyes once clear now searched the gloom of the hut for some reason to keep breathing. Juan Diego spent the nights on vigil. His heart fulfilled that ancestral duty that any man understands, to be by the side of the one he loves while death approaches its steps. But the heart is bigger than just one. The human heart holds more than one love, more than one loyalty, more than one conflict. And on that December 1531 dawn, Juan Diego's heart would begin to be divided in a way that would never completely heal. He needed a priest. Death was near. And a man who still embraces faith, even coming from a conquered people, a man who still prays in the hands of his conquerors because faith is greater than resentment, knows that the body can depart without divine consolation, but the soul cannot. And Juan Diego, despite everything, was a man of faith. Faith was his most precious possession, his only true wealth in a world that had taken everything else from him. He leaves therefore the hut on that cold December dawn. The road to the city is long. His feet, accustomed only to nearby work, now find themselves obliged to carry his tired body across paths he knows too well. Paths he has trod hundreds of times but which now seem different. The night is still black. The stars above speak a language he understands but cannot translate. The cold descending from the mountains touches his skin, and he wraps himself more tightly in the worn cloak he carries. He does not know that he is walking toward the encounter that would change everything. He thinks only of his uncle. His heart, even divided, does not yet know the reason for the division. The choice has not yet been presented to him because the true choice only exists when two equally valid possibilities stand before us. And Juan Diego does not yet know that heaven is calling him. But something is different on that morning. When he arrives near Tepeyac Hill, the wind changes direction. The air that was cold becomes warm. And then he hears. Not with his ears, not exactly. But that sound that transcends the physical. That sound that resonates in a place deeper than the eardrum. In a place that anatomy cannot map, but that every human soul recognizes when it touches. A music. Not the music of birds, although there are also birds, but a music that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. Sweet as water on arid land, firm as roots in deep soil. And in that music there was something that tore from Juan Diego's soul the need to understand and replaced it with a need to be present, to remain, to listen. He stops on the path. And at this exact moment, between the call of his dying uncle and the call of something greater he cannot name, Juan Diego faces for the first time the conflict that defines all spiritual existence, the tension between the earthly love he knows and the celestial love he only senses. What would you do at this point if you received a calling? If you knew your mother was dying but heaven awaited you? There is no correct answer. There is only the truth that we are beings divided between two worlds, and it is not weakness to be divided. It is simply being alive. 2. The celestial encounter. The first apparition. When Juan Diego raises his eyes to the hill, he sees what no man on any other night of his life had seen. The light does not come from the sun. It is not lightning. It is not a thunderbolt. It is as if the hill itself had lit an internal flame, as if that piece of arid land guarded within itself a luminous secret that only now at this instant was being revealed. And as the light intensifies, he sees the flowers. It is not possible. Not in December, not in a desert where winter brings only death. But there on the arid, cracked earth, blooming as if time had never touched that place, roses appear. Castilian roses, flowers that grow in the gardens of Europe, that should never survive in soil like that under a climate like this. But there they are, intact, fragrant, alive. And then, where there was only light and flowers, there is now form. There is presence. There is her. Not as the sacred images descend from the books of ours. Not like that European representation with cold and overly golden features, but real as the earth, tangible as the wind that now caresses Juan Diego's face, and at the same time unreal because of its perfection. Her skin has the color of the Mexican earth. Her face bears the features of the people he knows, which is his people, which is the America that has just been conquered, and that still cries under the weight of foreign empires. She is young, but with an age that transcends years. Her eyes carry a depth that is not human, because they contain within themselves the entire history of the world and all the future yet to unfold. She is enveloped in light that does not burn. Her cloak is a blue that does not exist in any earthly paint palette. It is covered with stars, each one in the exact place where they were on that morning of December 9th. At her feet the moon, and around her sun rays, as if she were the center of the universe and all the luminescence of the cosmos gravitated around her. Juan Diego falls to his knees, not out of fear, not out of the reverence he learned in the temples, but because his body can no longer sustain the weight of what his eyes see, because what is before him is so full of love, so pure in its intention, that the instinctive reaction of the human being is to surrender or disappear. Juanito, my little son. Her voice carries the tone of a mother who finds her lost son not only in space, but lost in time, lost in himself, lost in everything the world made him believe he was. Where are you going in such a hurry? And he speaks. His voice comes out low, trembling not from cold but from something greater. He speaks of his uncle. He speaks of the death that awaits him. He speaks of the need for a priest. He speaks of guilt because he is here and not there. He speaks like any man who has ever loved someone speaks when that death approaches, with fragments, with incompleteness, because language is never great enough to contain so much suffering. And she listens to him. All of her is attention. Not that attention the world offers where the person is physically present but mentally absent, planning the next commitment, but that attention that makes the person feel seen not only in their body, but in every corner of their soul, as if during those seconds, in the vast universe of God, he was the most important thing that exists. Do not fear, my beloved son, she speaks, and every word is a balm. I am Mary the ever-virgin, mother of the true God by whom one lives. I am your mother, and I desire that here, on this hill, a temple be built in my name. A place where you can come with all your pain, all your confusion, all your hope. A place of consolation for those who suffer, of healing for those who are wounded, of welcome for those who have been rejected by the world. And then, she says the phrase that will echo across 5 centuries, across billions of hearts that never heard it originally pronounced, but felt it in the silence of their own crises. Am I not here? Who am your mother? These words do not cure the uncle's fever. They do not resolve the dilemma. They do not transform the material situation, but they cure something deeper. Loneliness. The feeling of abandonment that is the true death. The isolation that the human being feels when facing suffering. Because these words simply confirm something the soul always knew, but the mind could never believe. You were never alone. When everything is silent, when everyone moves away, when death arrives and even your own courage abandons you, the mother is there. The vision does not last for hours. It lasts perhaps minutes, but those minutes contain eternity. When the light withdraws and Juan Diego can focus on his surroundings again, Tepeyac Hill is at dawn. The flowers remain, and he remains transformed in a way that he would never be the same. But he does not yet know that this is not the true proof. He does not know that the world will not believe him just because he saw. That the faith of a simple man is not currency that the world accepts, and that another encounter will be necessary. Another confirmation, another opportunity for heaven to prove its authenticity before those who demand evidence. He only knows at this moment that he was loved, and that perhaps that is enough. Juan Diego descends the hill with steps that do not know whether they should run or walk. His heart still vibrates with the echo of the voice he heard. His face still holds the memory of that look he saw in her eyes, all the love of the universe condensed in an instant. But as he walks through the city of Tenochtitlan, reality begins to weigh. Because the first question that arises is, who will believe? Not for lack of truth in his account, but because the truth, when told by a man without power, is just a story. And stories are currencies that circulate freely among the poor, without any value for those who control the structures of authority. A peasant's truth does not matter. Only the truth that the church, the bishop, the structure of power decides is true matters. He presents himself before Bishop Juan de Zumárraga. The room is large, cold as all rooms of power are. Gold crucifixes on the walls, images of European saints who do not know America, who do not know its people, who do not know the pain of that continent. And that man, the bishop, sits on his wooden throne as if he were a judge not only of human behavior, but of the divine itself. Juan Diego, with a humility bordering on self-annihilation, kneels and begins to tell. He speaks of the light, of the music, of the impossible flowers, of the Virgin Mary who appeared and asked for a temple to be built in her name. He speaks with absolute sincerity, without drama, without trying to convince. He merely reports what he saw, like someone who witnesses an accident reports to the police what they saw. And the bishop listens in silence, a silence that is more clamorous than any word. Because the silence of a man of power is the most effective tool of disregard. It is like saying, you are not important enough to deserve even my disdain. You are so insignificant that I can deny you even the dignity of a clear rejection. When he finally speaks, the bishop neither denies nor affirms. He only asks for one thing, a sign. My son, if this truly is the Mother of God, she will provide you with a sign. And then, in a tone that contains all the hardness of distrust, return when you have proof. Juan Diego leaves, and in that walk back across Tepeyac Hill, doubt assails him. Not doubt regarding what he saw, but doubt regarding himself. What if it had all been a hallucination? What if exhaustion, suffering, the imminent loss of his uncle had produced a vision that his mind interpreted as divine? The human being is capable of explaining anything to himself. The mind is an expert in self-sabotage when the heart cannot bear the weight of truth. But that night, when he returns to his hut, his uncle is worse. The fever has spiked, the body burns. And Juan Diego realizes that time is up, that death will arrive not in days, but in hours. And here, at this point, in any cinematic translation of this story, a mistake is made. The mistake of making it seem like Juan Diego, in his despair, immediately returns to the bishop or the hill. But the truth is more subtle and more painful. The truth is that he wants to flee the mission, that he takes a different path the next morning, deliberately avoiding Tepeyac Hill because he cannot bear the conflict between his duty to the one he loves and his duty to the divine calling. He wants a priest. He wants to administer the last sacraments. He wants to be present in his uncle's last moments. He chooses earthly love because it is the only love he can touch, he can see, he can confirm with his senses. And it is here in this flight that she finds him again, not in a blinding luminescence, not with power that crushes him, but with that tenderness that is more effective than any miracle. She appears before him, still enveloped in light, but this time the light is softer, closer, more accessible, less celestial, more maternal. My little son, where are you going? The voice brings consolation and also a certain uneasiness, as if she knew exactly why he was running away. And Juan Diego for the second time confesses his dilemma. He confesses that his uncle is dying. He confesses that he cannot fulfill the mission because his soul is divided between two loves. And then she does what any mother would do. She does not reproach him. She does not abandon him. But she consoles him and confirms what he most needs to hear. Do not let your heart be troubled, my son. Am I not here? Who am your mother? Are you not under the shadow of my protection? Am I not your life? Your cares to whom you entrust them? Arise, it is I. And then she tells him something that transforms everything. That he should go immediately to the top of Tepeyac Hill. That there he will find flowers. Flowers that should not exist in a place where nothing blooms. Flowers that will be the sign the bishop asked for. Flowers that the world cannot deny, because they are living witnesses of divine intervention. 4. The sign, the gathering of the impossible flowers. Tepeyac Hill on the morning of December 12th is a different place, because the truth is that the place does not change. It is the eyes of the one who sees that change. And Juan Diego's eyes had changed since the first encounter. He sees the earth not just as earth, but as a container of possibilities. As a place where the impossible can happen because heaven decided to make it so. And when he reaches the top among the rocks and the arid earth where nothing should grow, he finds exactly what she described. Roses. An abundance of roses. Of Castile. Flowers that grow in European gardens. That never knew that soil. That are as improbable as a miracle. Because, well, a miracle is exactly that. The improbable manifesting itself as real. Juan Diego, still in his state of reverence that characterizes all true encounters with the divine, begins to gather them. Each flower is treated with care, with respect, as if each one were carrying a specific message. His hands, wrinkled by work, gently touch the petals. But there is something more here that deserves contemplation. Because he does not just gather the flowers, he wraps them in his cloak. His cloak. That worn piece of clothing, made of simple fibers, nothing that suggested any importance. A fabric that should disintegrate within 20 years at most. Fabric that knows the sweat of work, the dust of the road, the weight of the years. That cloak that was no more than a poor indigenous man had to cover himself from the nightly cold, and he uses it now with reverence, as if it were a sacred container. Because he does not yet know. Nobody knows. But that cloak, that simple fiber called maguey or ixtal, that thing so trivial that it did not even deserve an important name, would become the most precious container in the entire history of the New World. An object that would defy science, that would preserve the impossible image, that would become not only testimony to the miracle, but the miracle itself in its most palpable form. As he fills his cloak with the impossible flowers, his heart overflows, because now he knows. The bishop will not be able to deny it. The world will not be able to deny it. Those flowers are proof that heaven speaks through him, that a simple indigenous man, a man the world considered less than a complete human being, is important enough for the Mother of God to choose as a messenger. And perhaps at this instant you realize something in your own life. When you offer the little you possess, when you place in divine hands what is most precious to you, when you say yes to the call, even if you do not completely understand where it leads you, the impossible becomes tangible. Bishop Juan de Zumárraga's chamber on that morning of December 12th is the meeting point between two worlds. On one side, the Western religious authority, with its theological treatises, its decisions about what is possible and what is not possible, its structures of power that determine which truth is truth. On the other side, a barefoot man carrying a cloak full of impossible flowers. Juan Diego enters. His steps are firm, no longer hesitant, because he carries more than flowers now. He carries the certainty of having been chosen. He carries the peace of knowing he is not alone in this mission. He carries the confidence that heaven is on his side. My Lord, he speaks, kneeling as protocol dictates. But his voice is not the voice of a subjugated man. It is the voice of someone who knows a truth that transcends any earthly hierarchy. I bring the sign you asked for. And he extends the cloak. The flowers fall from the cloak to the stone floor. One, then another, then dozens of them. Petals that should not exist in that climate, in that season, in that place. Castilian roses in all their impossible beauty. And as they fall slowly, as in slow motion, the bishop and all those present in the room see something that will forever change their understanding of reality. The image. It had not been painted. No human hand had ever touched that fiber. No paint, no pigment that subsequent science could identify. But there, imprinted on Juan Diego's cloak, was she, the Virgin Mary. Not as European artists represented her, with idealized features, with the pale skin of an abstract divinity, but as she was, as she truly was, with the brown skin of the Mexican people, with features that belong to America, not Europe, with a face that says to the indigenous people, you have not been forgotten. Heaven sees you. Heaven speaks your language. Heaven chose one of you as the mother of all. The bishop falls to his knees, not in a theatrical gesture, but in a real uncontrolled fall because his legs can no longer sustain the weight of understanding. Because a man who was trained to distinguish between falsehood and truth, between heresy and genuine faith, knows that he is in the presence of the genuinely sacred. The others in the room also fall. Priests, scribes, church officials, men who dedicated their lives to the study of theology, who know the sacred text by heart, who never stopped questioning and doubting. And now, before that image that could not exist, all doubt dissolves. This is the sign of the Most High, the bishop proclaims, his voice trembling. Here is the work of God. But there is more, because while the miracle is revealed in the bishop's chamber in Tenochtitlan, kilometers away, in the humble hut where Juan Bernardino is agonizing, something extraordinary happens. Juan Bernardino, the uncle who was on the verge of death, whose breathing had become intermittent, whose body burned with fever, opens his eyes. The fever ceased, not slowly, like natural healing processes, but instantly, as if someone had put out a flame. His skin, which was burning, is now normal. His breathing, which was short and hurried, now flows at a healthy pace. And when he sits up, not like a weak man recovering from illness, but like someone completely restored, calling for his nephew, he knows exactly what happened. Later, when Juan Diego returns to the hut, his uncle will recount the encounter, that a brown-skinned woman enveloped in light appeared before him, that she placed her hand on his chest, that she whispered words of healing and consolation, and that she asked to be called not just Virgin Mary, but specifically Saint Mary of Guadalupe. And here is the true miracle, not just the healing of the body, but the double confirmation, the image that the bishop sees and the healing that the people witness. Because when the divine acts, it acts completely. It leaves no room for alternative interpretations. It offers no ambiguity for doubt to nestle. The news spreads, not like a rumor that dissipates, but like a truth that remains, like fire that does not consume but warms, because that is the difference between a beautiful story and a miracle. A story you can question, but a miracle you experience. As the morning progresses and the day passes, people begin to arrive at the place where the tilma is being kept. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds, then crowds. Not because they were ordered to, not because the church convinced them, but because something within them, that deepest part that knows the truth when it touches it, guides them to that place. And when they see the image, they see themselves. The indigenous people whose people were conquered and subjugated see a mother who has their color. The Spanish who arrived as conquerors see a mother who calls them to for compassion. The poor see a mother who chose a poor man as a messenger. The rich are confronted with the irrelevance of their riches. The tilma does what no preaching could do. It does what no promise could fulfill. It unifies. Because everyone, regardless of race, class, or power, sees in the Mother of Guadalupe that love that transcends all human categories. And that simple fiber, that worn cloak that Juan Diego wore, begins its journey of almost 500 years of impossible preservation, because subsequent science would discover what no scientist could completely explain. A fabric that should disintegrate in 20 years remains intact. Colors that should fade maintain their vibrancy. An image that should have visible pigments does not have them. And in the eyes of the Virgin, microscopic reflections of the people present at the moment of the miracle, as if the image itself had captured the divine witness of what happened. All of this is not accidental. All of this is not a coincidence. Because when heaven moves, it moves completely. It creates not just a miracle, but witnesses that the miracle leaves behind. Marks that last for centuries. But what now? What importance does a miracle that happened 5 centuries ago have? Why should such a distant story touch your heart in this instant in which you live, in a completely different world, facing crises that Juan Diego could never imagine? The answer lies in understanding what really happened when that image was revealed. It was not just a historical event. It was a transformation of the very understanding of how God acts in the world. Because the story of Guadalupe whispers a truth that institutional religion sometimes forgets. God does not speak only through structures of power. He does not communicate only with bishops and popes and authorities. He speaks through the humble. He chooses the forgotten. He transforms the despised into a bearer of the divine message. And this understanding is not comfortable, because if God can speak through Juan Diego, a poor, barefoot indigenous man without social importance, then perhaps God is also speaking through you. Perhaps you too have been chosen for something that transcends your current understanding. Perhaps the silence you feel in your soul is not the absence of God, but the silence of a calling you have not yet dared to accept. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, something extraordinary began to happen in Mexico. Not a reaction of shock or fleeting curiosity, but a genuine transformation of spiritual consciousness. The indigenous peoples who had seen their ancient religion destroyed, their temples profaned, their gods declared false, found in Our Lady of Guadalupe not a denial of their identity, but an affirmation of it. Because she had their color, because she spoke their language, because she chose their sacred ground to reveal herself. Suddenly, converting to Christianity no longer meant embracing the conqueror's religion as an act of surrender. It meant finding in Christ and in Mary a mother who understands them, who sees them, who chooses them. And conversion came, not imposed by the sword, but attracted by compassion. In 8 years after the apparition, more than 8 million indigenous people converted. Not because they were forced, but because they saw in the image of Guadalupe the face of the one who truly loved them. Think about what this means. A division that seemed irreconcilable was stitched together by a mother who chose to embrace both sides. The European conqueror and the indigenous conquered. Both find in her not a contradiction of their identities, but a synthesis. A promise that even when everything seems divided, there is a level of love that transcends the divisions. And this message, this deep structure of how God acts, is not specific to the 16th century. It is eternal, because conflicts change, but the nature of human suffering remains. There are always divisions. There are always conquerors and conquered, oppressors and oppressed, forgotten and remembered. And in every situation, the Mother of Guadalupe continues to whisper the same truth. I am not just here. I am here for those the world forgot. I am here to heal the divisions that seem irreconcilable. Today, the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe is the second most visited sanctuary in the Christian world, second only to the Vatican. Billions of feet have trod that ground. Billions of hearts have been touched by that image, not because the Church commanded it, but because when you find true compassion, when you are seen completely, when you feel you are not alone, the attraction is irresistible. And the tilma remains, almost 500 years, passed through fires that should have consumed it, touched by billions of hands that should have damaged it, exposed to humidity, to lit candles, to extreme temperature changes, placed in containers that would have destroyed any other fabric centuries ago. But it remains, intact, vibrant, as if time itself had been prevented from its action, as if heaven were saying with every passing century, remember, the sign remains, my love remains. And it is here that you need to understand something crucial. The miracle of Guadalupe is not just an event of the past, it is a structure that continues to operate. Because every time someone in their own canyon of suffering raises their eyes and says, I am not alone, the miracle happens again. Every time someone who was discarded by an unjust society finds in Guadalupe the confirmation of their infinite worth, the miracle continues. The eyes of the Virgin, where scientists discovered the reflected faces of the people present on that day in 1531, continue to reflect today. Because you are also there, your face is also reflected, your story is also known, your pain is also seen. The message of Guadalupe is simple and infinitely profound. The love of God is not for the powerful, the rich, the beautiful, the intelligent, the well-born. The love of God is for those who suffer, for those who have been rejected, for those who question whether they still deserve to be loved, for you. Because here's the true mystery that no theology has been able to completely solve. Why did heaven choose to appear in such a specific way? Why not in a great miracle visible to everyone simultaneously? Why not in a way that no mind could question? The answer lies in the very nature of true faith. Faith is not absolute certainty. Faith is trust offered voluntarily, freely, without compulsion. If God revealed himself so absolutely that no one could question, then faith would disappear. Only knowledge would remain. And knowledge saves no one. Only love saves. And love, true love, requires choice. It requires you to voluntarily decide to believe, decide to trust, decide to offer heaven the precious gift of your faith, even when you cannot completely understand. Juan Diego offered his faith, and that faith changed a continent. His individual faith of an unimportant man touched billions of lives. What will be the reach of your faith? What will be the size of the miracle that heaven wants to produce through you if you just say yes? 7. Climax and final reflection. The eternal consolation. You reach the end of this story and now face the most important question. It is not about what happened in 1531. It is about what this means to you now. Because what we learn throughout this journey is not simply that miracles exist, but that they exist for everyone, that there is no hierarchy in divine love, that the one who was disregarded by an entire society can be chosen to transform the world, that the Mother of God did not forget anyone, not even those who were forgotten by everyone else. Juan Diego grew old after the miracle. He did not become famous. He did not gain riches. He did not ascend in the ecclesiastical hierarchy. He remained simple, humble, dedicating the rest of his life to protecting the image and transmitting the message of love he had received from the Mother. And perhaps that is the most important lesson. The true miracle is not what happens to you. It is what you become after the miracle, how you choose to live, how you love, how you offer consolation to others because you yourself were comforted. But there is something you need to understand at this moment. The story of Guadalupe is not a story that ends. It is a story that continues. Because the mother who appeared to Juan Diego did not disappear. She remains. In silence. In the night when you wake up afraid. In the day when everything seems lost. In the loneliness you carry even when surrounded by people. Because her promise was not just for Juan Diego. It was for all of us. It was an eternal proclamation that none of us was, is, or will be abandoned. That there exists in the universe a maternal presence that knows your name, that sees your pain, that knows exactly when you will be tested beyond your strength and is there waiting to whisper the most powerful words a human being can hear. Am I not here? Who am your mother? Those words do not solve your material problems, but they change something deeper. They change your understanding of being alone. They transform loneliness into communion, because the one who hears those words understands that they are connected to something greater. That the mother is not just in the ancient story. She is here. She is now. She is aware of your specific suffering, your particular pain, your unique fear. And that awareness changes everything. The miracle you sought may not be the magical cure for your illness. It may not be the return of the one you love. It may not be the wealth you desired or the success you planned, but the real miracle, the miracle that remains constant in all circumstances, is the certainty of not being alone, of being seen, of being loved unconditionally, without any action of yours justifying that love. That is the message of Guadalupe. It is not a promise of material comfort. It is the promise of spiritual consolation. And spiritual consolation is capable of sustaining a person through any material suffering. In the years that followed the apparition, the story of Juan Diego and Our Lady of Guadalupe spread, not just throughout Mexico, but throughout all of Latin America, throughout the entire Catholic world. And in every place the story reached, something happened. Hearts that were full of despair found hope. People who felt rejected found acceptance. Divided communities found unity, because the message is universal. It is independent of era, place, or circumstance. There is always someone suffering. There is always someone who has been forgotten. There is always someone who doubts whether they still deserve love. And to all these Guadalupe speaks. Today, the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe receives more than 20 million pilgrims per year. Most of them do not come because they believe in miraculous miracles in a literal sense. They come because they feel that something true, something sacred, something genuinely loving exists in that place. They come because the image touches something in their souls that no rational explanation can reach. And when you look at that image, you see a mother who is not on a distant throne, judging, condemning, demanding. You see a mother who is here, now, present, caring. Her eyes do not judge. Her face does not condemn. Her hands do not punish. They only embrace. And if you listen carefully, if you close your eyes and allow your heart to open, perhaps you will hear the same voice that Juan Diego heard. Perhaps you will feel the same presence. Perhaps you will receive the same promise. Not because you deserve it. Not because you did everything correctly. Not because your faith is pure or your heart is perfect, but simply because you exist. Because heaven chose you, as it chose Juan Diego. As it chose every person who has ever breathed. The story of Guadalupe is not a story of magic. It is a story of love. Love that cannot be explained by logic. Love that does not rest on deserving or merit. Love that simply is eternally unconditional. And that love continues today. Not in spectacular miraculous events, although these may occur, but in silent moments. When you are alone at night and suddenly feel a peace you cannot explain. When you receive comfort unexpectedly, as if the universe knew exactly what you needed at that moment. When you find strength you did not know you possessed. when a certain word arrives at the right time, when the impossible becomes possible. These are the miracles of today. Silent miracles, miracles that cannot be measured or scientifically explained, but that anyone who has lived sincerely recognizes as divine. You have reached the end of this story. You have heard everything, from Juan Diego's silence on the hill to the revelation of the tilma, from the bishop's doubt to the transformation of a continent, from the past story to this eternal present. And now you face a choice. You can leave this story here. You can conclude that it was an interesting narrative about a curious historical event. You can go on with your life exactly as it was before hearing it. Or you can allow this story to work in you, to penetrate the fractures of your heart, to whisper in the moments when you feel most alone, to be a voice you can call when everything seems lost, because that is the true nature of a sacred story. It is not simply information about the past. It is a mirror in which you see your own life reflected. It is a silent invitation for you too to say yes to the divine calling, whatever form it takes in your specific life. The message is simple. You are not alone. Whatever you are facing, there is a mother who sees. Whatever you fear, there is a love that transcends that fear. Whatever you doubt, there is a truth that can touch your heart if you allow it. If this story touched you, share it. Let others feel the consolation you feel. Let the message of Guadalupe continue to echo through the centuries, touching heart after heart, reminding every person who lives that they were not forgotten. Subscribe to the channel to receive more stories of faith, hope, and transformation, because there are many other stories that need to be heard, many other voices that heaven chose to transform the world, many other reasons to believe that grace is still alive, and share this story with someone you love, with someone who is suffering, with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone. Because perhaps for that person, this is the story that changes everything. It is the sign they were waiting for. It is the voice they were looking for. Am I not here? Who am your mother? That question echoed in 1531. It resonated across 5 centuries. And now, in this instant, it resonates within you. Because the Mother of God does not speak only through ancient images. She speaks through modern silences. She speaks through the loneliness you feel. She speaks through the hope you can still maintain. And if you allow it, she speaks through your own life too. The story of Juan Diego and Our Lady of Guadalupe is not a conclusion. It is a beginning. The beginning of your own journey to discover that amidst the chaos of the world, amidst the suffering that seems endless, there is a mother who never stopped loving you, who never stopped calling your name, who waits only for you to raise your eyes and see. Because the miracle is not the image that remains on the tilma. The miracle is you, your life, your courage to keep believing, your decision to love even when you were hurt, your choice to offer consolation to others because you yourself were comforted. That is the true miracle of Guadalupe. And that miracle remains alive, here, now, inside you.